everybody, we are back here with NMRAx with our next clinician, who is our British Canadian or our Canadian Brit. I'm not sure which way around you like it, Peter, but you've got it both ways there. Mr. Bowen from England, who's part of the British region, and Peter's going to give his weathering in 5 minutes clinic. So if you've got 500 freight cars to weather, this is the clinic for you. We'll let Peter go in just a second here. I'm just going to make you go full screen. This is all on camera, people, so there's no PowerPoint. And there we go. Over to you, Peter.
Okay. Good day, everyone. And it's a great opportunity to share with you things that I've discovered about weathering. I've done weathering with airbrush. I've done all kinds of different techniques, and I see even today various people across the world doing clinics on weathering. I wanted to show you what I've discovered, a method of creating the effect of weathering and creating that effect very quickly. Rob Clark's clinic, his railroad and his scenes and his photography, everything looks real. And I think as modelers, this is what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish that illusion that everything looks real. When you take a model out of the box, it's all pristine and shiny, and it looks like plastic. And you put it on your layout and it still looks like plastic, in my opinion. We want to try to make that look more realistic. And one of the things you need to do is just look at the real world. Look at things in the real world and look at how the rain and dust and dirt affects everything. And if we could try to recreate that on a piece of plastic and make it look realistic, then we've achieved something. And that's what I'm going to try and show you today. So if you've got 5 minutes, sit back and enjoy. I just wanted to show you, I am also the editor and publisher of the NMRA British Region magazine, The Roundhouse. We have some really good modelers in this country. Brian Moore down in Plymouth has a fantastic layout on the Southern Pacific. And you've just seen Rob Clark's presentation, and his modeling is absolutely fab. And it all comes down to making models look realistic. So what I'm going to show you is some simple techniques. First of all, I'm going to use pan pastels. And pan pastels essentially is a powdered material in a little tray. And it's a very fine pigment. And these things called pan pastels are relatively inexpensive. And a little pan like this will last years and years. It comes in many different colors. And each one has an effect. But don't get too worried or too upset about getting into this and getting all confused with colors and that. All you really need are 2 colors. You need a gray, which is actually a natural gray shade, and burnt sienna. And burnt sienna will give us lovely rust effects. And the gray essentially will tone everything down. So let's take something very simple, just to start the process. Here's a, and by the way, I model in ON30, so I'm using O scale, 148, 143 scale models. So here's a 143 scale army truck. And I'm going to take just an ordinary artist brush, and I'm going to dip it into this gray pastel material. I'm just going to dip it, and then all I'm going to do is sort of dab it on, just like that. And right away, we start to get, I hope you can see that.
No, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Not the same as that.
I'm asking my cameraman here if it's okay, my wife. And so just putting on some, just blobbing it on. There's no sort of, there's no right or wrong with this stuff. You just blob it on. And all we're doing is we're trying to replicate the effect of weather. And what does weather do to materials? Let's take for instance, the tire here. This tire. It's a lovely tire. It's rubber and metal, and it looks really good. And we just put some of that gray on, swish it around, and all of a sudden we've got a tire that looks more like a tire. It's got dust and dirt and grime on it. And that's essentially what we're trying to do. Very quickly, very simply. So let's be a little more daring now. We're going to take a locomotive and we're going to weather this locomotive. Now, I said you can do this in 5 minutes. You can if you're quick. And unlike paint, you don't have to be too particular with it. It's just a matter of applying this powder. I hope you can see that. It's difficult to see because I'm looking at this sort of sideways and also looking at a computer screen that's got a time delay lag on it. And I can't really tell if that's
fine.
If that's doing the job. But I think you get the sort of idea that all we're doing is we're just blobbing this fine powder on, and it's toning it down. When it comes to, let me just take this for a minute. When it comes to weathering, you have to remember that grime and dust comes up from the bottom up, and the rain comes from the top down. So when you're applying any type of weathering, it's always down strokes. I don't go up, I always go down. And you can see I'm just applying this just brushing. So I've used a brush. I'm now going to use a piece of sponge, just a piece of sponge rubber. Doesn't have to be anything special. And wiping that over what we've applied, this tends to smudge the powder on the surface, and it almost blends it into the surface. So if you sort of compare a before and an after, you get some idea of what we're trying to achieve here. Okay, so now I'm going to use some burnt sienna. It's a powder. It's a very fine powder, and just use the same brush. You don't have to clean or wash the brushes. And we just apply it on a downward motion like that. And rust tends to collect in the corners of metal. So in the corners of the struts going down the side of the car. And the sponge will just blur it, blend it. And the rust collects at the bottom, which is good. We just kind of blend that in there like that. And take a little more of the gray and just wipe it over. And the thing with weathering is it doesn't follow any pattern. It's very random. So whatever you do looks fairly good. And as Rob said in his clinic before this, it's your railroad. You can do what you want. And the same with weathering. The same with any artwork. It's your interpretation of that. So if you like what it looks like and you say, oh, it looks nice. Yes, I like that. Okay. So how do I preserve that? How do I keep that so it's not going to rub off or come off when I start to handle it with my fingers? Tester's dull coat. Yes, you can use this and it will fix the powder onto the surface. And it's because it's a flat matte spray, it's completely dull. It won't add any shine to it at all. Now, you can use testers. In England, this is about £6 for a little tiny can like this. I found this stuff, which the war gamers and the people that are in military modeling use. It's called Army Painter. Now, you have to look at the size of the cans. This is £6. This is £10. It's a whole lot more value for money. A few years ago, I did a test. I wanted to see what the difference was between Tester's dull coat, Army Painter, and pound store or dollar store matte spray. And as you can see, the cheap matte sprays aren't matte at all. They're still shiny. Ordinary hairspray, while it will fix the material, it still is shiny. It's not dull. So dull coat or Army Painter will fix everything and make it nice and dull. Okay, so you look at that and you say, oh, it's all very nice, but I don't like it. I made a mistake. What do I do? How can I get it off? If I try to rub it off with a paper towel, all it does is smudge. It smudges it and makes it worse. I can't, I'm stuck. I've just spoiled a rather expensive model. So take a brush and some water and just wash it off. And that's all we're doing here is washing off all that dry powder.
Before you spray
it. And this is to try to get it back to what it was like before we started to weather it. So if you make a mistake, you can fix it. Just wash it off. Once you're happy with the overall effect, then fix it so it doesn't come off. Okay, so you joined this clinic because you wanted to see weathering a locomotive. And the process is the same. We just continue on with the applying the pan pastel in downward motions, some thicker than others areas, some quite light, some quite heavy, and just applying. And you can also brush this onto the trucks as well. You can dull those down a bit too. And because it's not paint, it's not going to bugger up all the gears and everything. And just switch it in, splash it on, whatever you want to call it. It's all part of the process. So we're just using a brush and dropping an expensive locomotive. That's okay. Plenty more where that one came from. Don't tell the wife. Okay, so here we go. And she's standing right here too. Okay, so here we go. There. So we're essentially, what we're doing is we're converting this plastic and painted metal looking model into something that looks like it's been out in all the rain and the dust and the dirt for years, and it hasn't been treated very well at all. It certainly hasn't been washed, that's for sure. But you can see here we're quickly just dusting it over with the pan pastel stuff. And that's essentially it. Now we want to get some detail. We want to get some rusting, stains and things. I use a finer brush and just dip it into the burnt sienna pan pastel. And then I apply it where I want the rust to appear. So in this case, I want it to appear at the bottoms of the railings. Put some in here. And we just start to splodge it on like this. And that's essentially all we're doing is that. Now, before we used the sponge to smudge it. It's very difficult to get a sponge into these fine areas. So instead of using a sponge, you could use a cotton tip thing and just smudge that down like that. And again, all we're trying to do is we're trying to replicate that effect of rust staining. And sometimes I use just a dry brush with nothing on it at all, just to wipe over those areas where we've put the burnt sienna. So what we've got here then is we've got in a very short space of time we've turned the model from something that looks plastic and brand new to something that's looking weathered and old. And when we start to look at that close up and we start to take pictures, it starts looking real. And that's what we're trying to achieve. It's something which looks real and not like a plastic model out of a box. And you can continue on with this just picking up little areas and just giving a little splodge like that. So the same goes true with a tender. Let's say a tender of a locomotive. We just take that gray powder again and we're just going to swipe it down. Just like that. Just wipe it down. And then, without dipping it into more powder, just wipe over that with the brush. And you see the brush starts to blend it into the surface. And you can get aggressive and use a toothbrush, which will put vertical streaks, or use the sponge to blend it. There's no right or wrong with this stuff. You do what you're happy with and what you like. After all, it's your railroad, and you've got to be happy with it. Now, this tender has a load of plastic coal in it, which doesn't look really good at all. Again, some of the grey powder just wiped over the top. And we'll take that shine right off. Hit it with the dull coat, and that will take any specks of shine away completely. So that's essentially the process. It's applying these pan pastel powders directly to the surface, and very quickly, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you can weather an entire freight car or locomotive. So you can apply this process to anything, even a model car. So here's a car which I weathered up using a method that uses salt, which you then you spray the whole car with red oxide. You put salt onto the surface while it's still wet, and then you overspray it with the color that is going to be the final color. And then when it's dry, you take a toothbrush and you scrub the surface, and it rubs off all the salt, and you're left with the original red oxide underneath the top coat, and that simulates the rust. And of course, some of the salt sticks to the surface and it looks like rust blisters. So if we go back to the pan pastel powder, we pick up some of that powder and we apply it over the top. And all we're doing here is we're blending in that rust effect. So that's what we're trying to achieve here, is that sort of worn out, rusty look. This particular model has some weathered wood, which I stained with shoe dye and alcohol, and lined the bed of the truck with some weathered wood. And then I took some acetate. This window's half down. That one's wound up all the way, and then just took some very fine emery paper and scrubbed it on the surface to make the glass look old and worn too. You can also apply the same grey to the wheels, the tires, to tone those down as well. And what the heck, just apply some more of that over the top to blend that down, blend it down a bit. So you can see that it's just blended, the whole thing. So that's my take on weathering. I can carry on and keep going and just have a whale of a time. But I wanted to mention that it's a good idea to wear gloves, surgical gloves, because this powder, it gets into everything. It's almost like a paint, like a stain. It will get into your fingers and into your nails, and also make sure that you're working on a surface that you can clean.
Somebody wants to know that colour.
So yeah, Peter, I've got some questions from the chat for you. If that's okay,
go
we'll
ahead.
hit some of those, and I think we've got quite a lot of questions, which is cool.
Sure.
So I'm just going to run down I've been capturing them as we've gone. So first question was from Perry Lamb. Perry asks, do you apply a flat finish before you apply your pan pastels?
No. You can apply the pan pastel to any surface, even a glossy surface. In the case of a locomotive that's pre-painted and quite glossy in its finish, as soon as you hit it with the pan pastel, it will start to dull it down. It's an immediate thing.
Okay, and then Perry asked another question. He said, have you ever used a wash before adding pan pastels to provide shadows in places like truck side frames and underbodies?
I haven't used that method at all, no. But you could. In fact, if you did that to start with, applying the pan pastel over the top will dull it down and make the effect much more subtle. So actually, yes, that's a good idea.
Okay. David Amon from the UK asks a very UK question. He wants to know, where did you manage to find a tin of chopped tomatoes during the lockdown?
Morrison's.
There you go.
We Helen and I have been locked down since St. Patrick's Day, and fortunately we have friends that have been doing our shopping for us, but we have not been out for almost 6 weeks.
Well, for a walk.
But we go out for a walk, yes, but we haven't been anywhere near people for 6 weeks.
Okay. Well, he has a good question that's not people related, but it's related to things that people live in. Could you use these same techniques on buildings and structures?
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, Helen, could you go and get the snow shed in the?
In your office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. My big love is structures and scratch building, and I use this method of using shoe dye and alcohol to stain wood, because it leaves a nice silvery effect, and as wood weathers and ages, it actually turns to lovely shades of grey and silver. So that's a very good technique. But to take that weathering step a step further, I recently built a snow shed based on the snow shed on the Canadian Pacific Railway in British Columbia. And after I built this model, and I had put this weathered wood on the top, and it all looked very nice, but it just didn't quite look, it still looked like a weathered wood model. And I took pan pastels and I weathered the structure, the wood over the top, using a big brush with bristles that are quite wide, and it produced a lovely effect. My wife Helen has just gone around to get the model to show you, so we'll bring that up.
Well, I've got loads of questions, so I'll keep firing some at you while we're working there. Joseph Martin asks, is it okay to use the Doko on the trucks of the locos and freight cars without messing them up?
Absolutely, it is. As long as the wheels on the locomotives still have electrical contact,
we should be okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, here we go. Here's one we prepared earlier. Look at that.
That's good.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is a wood structure, and this has had pan pastels applied over the top of the wood to create that further effect of weathering. So that's a very big model.
That's great. Okay, and we'll keep going. Can you mix this technique with paint as well? So could you use pan pastels and paint?
Absolutely, yes. If you well, for instance, on these trucks, these were painted, and then the weathering was applied over the top.
So I should probably have said it was Bernard that asked that question, and he also asked, would you apply acrylic or oil paints before or after the pan pastels?
I would use acrylic myself, only because I like water cleanup.
Okay, that's cool. It's good to hear a model railroader that uses water. Okay, Paul Lascari asks, once you apply the Doko, is there any way to undo the weathering?
No, no. It's the dull coat is a fixative. It fixes the surface. So you're putting a very thin coating over the whole thing to protect it and fix it in place. So once you've fixed that weathering effect, that's it. You can't undo it. You can paint over the top of it. You could apply additional pan pastel weathering over the top of that. A lot of modelers a lot of the military modelers use hairspray in between layers to fix that layer. So if you were to take this and use hairspray on it, the hairspray is going to fix the the pan pastel onto the surface, but the hairspray is not flat. It's just a fix. It fixes it. So yes, you could use hairspray or a fixative or a dull coat, and then apply more weathering on top of that.
Okay, that's awesome. And then I guess dull coat is your final coat, just to flatten off the finish.
Yes, that's right. The dull coat will take the shine off anything. It just dulls it, and it's putting down a thin layer of matte protective spray. It's great, but this is my real pal. This stuff.
Have you got shares in that?
Army painter. No, I wish I did.
Okay, I've got more questions. So, and they still keep coming in on the chat. So, Roy Masterson. Sorry if I get anyone's names wrong. I'm not very good with names. He came a little bit late to your clinic today, and he just asked, what color of grey did you use?
Okay.
What's the actual name of it?
So, this material, it's called Pastels. Artist Pastels. This particular one I'm using is it's called Neutral Grey Shade.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah, we can see
Yeah.
that.
Okay. And then the other one is burnt sienna.
Okay.
Okay. And
what do you use some of these for?
And yes, there are other colours and other shades of colour which I do use. Which, strangely enough, some of these colours you'd say, well, surely you would never use that on a model. Violet. Well, again, it adds layers of subtle colour variations. So if you apply it and you blend it, it starts to add. It's much like weathering the wood. You get different levels of different shades of grey. So to get
not 50 though.
Not 50 shades of grey. No. No. I've already got 2 shades of grey. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll keep going on that note. Is it preferable to remove the wheels from rolling stock before spraying the dull coat?
No, I don't. That's just another step which I can't be bothered with, to be honest. Now, something like this, which has steel wheels, yes, I will probably take the wheels off and I will paint those. I will spray them. Probably spray them with Tamiya boxcar red or something, just to dull them down, and then apply some pan pastels. Apply the grey over the top just to dull that down as well. But for the most part, no, I don't bother.
Okay. We are getting through a few of our questions, and we're going to end up having to break while we bring the next person in the studio. So we should be good here. So Pete Steinmetz asked about the rest of the colours on your workbench. You're pretty pinks, but I think you just answered that question. He was wondering if they were just for show, because pastels can be quite expensive, and he was just, seeing if you were flashing the model railroad in cash. But
I actually bought all of these on eBay, and I got somebody was selling all of these colours for a ridiculous price. I think they just wanted to get rid of them. So they didn't really cost me anything.
Did you demo?
Would I use these? I probably would, but would I go and buy them? No, probably. You don't need them. The only colours you need are the grey and the rust. That's it. So it's the natural grey shade and the burnt sienna. That's all you need.
Okay. Okay, so you might not know the answer to this, because I know that these materials are not available in the UK. But which is which would be your preference? Could you compare and contrast the differences between Pastels and Bragdon powders?
I've never used Bragdon powders, but I'm sure they're probably the same thing.
It's like
The
the
only
AIM
reason
powders.
the only reason I use this is because these are available at every art store in the country,
Yeah,
and they're
no,
not expensive. I think the actual retail price of one of these is about £6, which
yeah.
I don't
But
think
they
is a
last.
lot.
How long does one last you?
I would guess these would last maybe 30 or 40 years.
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 We're not talking number of cars. We're talking the lifetime of your modelling. Once you get the models out of the blue boxes.
Well, because you're not using much.
No.
It's
Shows how much you're doing with it.
a little goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And there's no smell to these. However, I would recommend wearing a face mask if you're doing a lot, because you don't want to be breathing in that fine powder.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Totally understand that. So, a little bit away from weathering, and just for some people that are interested in our what's going on in the British region and stuff, and the great modelling that's on show from Rob Clark, Alan Cap, yourself, others in the British region. I know that we've just launched a new website this morning, and we have a special little offer for people if they want to go and check out the digital version of our magazine. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. We've essentially taken, I think, the last 10 years of Roundhouse, and we've made a digital version of it. We've put it on our website. Until the 30th of May, you have access to all of the Roundhouse magazines, and you can look through them all online for free. And after the 30th of May, if you still like what you're seeing, you could subscribe to this magazine. It's produced every other month, and it's fantastic. It's fabulous. There's 32 pages of stuff on modeling. It's amazing. It's incredible.
And how much does it cost for somebody who wants to subscribe to our magazine?
It's £45 per year, postage included, worldwide.
What if you want a digital version? Because we have the magazine available digitally.
It's £35 a year for the digital version.
Excellent, fantastic. So there you go, people. Digital NMRA magazine. One day maybe other places will catch up. But there we go. We got a digital magazine. Our new website. You can find us. Is it the old web address or is it a new one?
The same web address.
Same web address. So it's www.nmrabr.org.uk. So that's all the W's. .nmrabr.org.uk. So I think that is our contribution from the British region, apart from me staying up all day and driving computers. So we've been to Australia, we've been to the United Kingdom on our whistle stop tour of the NMRA, and we'll soon, in about 15 minutes, we'll be going back to Georgia, to Perry Lamb, and we will stay in the United States for the rest of our day. I hope everybody's enjoying what they're seeing, and keep listening, keep watching, keep commenting on the stream. And Mr. John Bono or Bonner, I can't remember which way to say your surname, John. So you're gonna just have to slap me, and that's fine. We will let you go and open your parcel from One Bad Hobbies. Enjoy. I expect to find out what was in there in the comments. So thanks everybody. Thanks a lot there, Peter. Enjoy the beer. We'll catch you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
bye.